taking a trip to the past, that past just being yesterday with week 1 of high school football. Welcome everyone to Locker Room Rewind, powered by Chunky Nelms Insurance. Access to over 20 insurance companies to get you the best value. Located at 1121 South Abe Street, San Angelo, Texas. We all know how necessary insurance is, no matter if it's car insurance or home insurance. We also know how necessary it is to play your best players in a season opener against one of the top-ranked teams in the state. We have a little more on that coming up. And, of course, we all know how necessary Texas high school football is. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's August 29th, 2020. I'm your host, Ryan Reynolds, alongside KSAN's Jaydon Hart, also joining today's show. I don't know how we managed to book this guy, but we have TLCA head football coach Matt Jones switching the show behind the camera. Jeff Caldwell, who didn't even know until about an hour out that he actually had a role in this show. That's just kind of how unprepared we are. Jeff, tell everyone hi.
Oh, hey, what's up?
I don't know if you can hear it, but Jeff said hi.
That's okay.
I know we're all lacking sleep today. I went to bed at like 2:30, woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Coach, I know you had some meetings this morning. You got home late as well, coming home from Brady.
About the same.
And then
love it.
You guys going on an hour later for Inside the Game.
It's all right.
So we're all running on
Thanks, Jimmy Fallon.
Very little hours of sleep. I'm kind of curious how many hours of sleep combined we all got.
Probably 2, 3 for me.
But the good thing is, Coach, thank you so much for joining us. Our first guest on Locker Room Rewind. It really is great to have you. How are you doing today? Day after game day.
Doing pretty good. Still pretty positive about the season. We're going to get after it next week and see how it goes.
You guys have a Junction next week. Jaydon, Inside the Game, an hour later. Week 1 of the high school football season in the books. What do you make of it?
There's so many things that you could say about week 1. I mean, there's the dominant aspect that some of the teams went out and just did. You have the aspect of, okay, look, these games were supposed to be competitive and something might have happened, specifically Wall and Eastland, where it wasn't competitive. The Ballinger and Jim Ned, the Blackwell Eden game that was supposed to be competitive, fit the bill, and were probably the 2 best games that we had as far as area teams this week. Another one, Sterling City, just blowing out Garden City, but I think some people kind of expected that. I think the biggest shocker was Mason, but we can get into all of that. And it was just kind of a weird week, to say the least, I think.
Week 1 of the high school football season in the books. All of us managed to get out of the bed this morning. We're productive. I think that deserves a nice round of applause.
Mm-hmm. How about that? Yeah, that's...
Go ahead and plug in that applause there.
Is there applause?
Yeah, we just can't hear it. It's going, I promise you, Jaydon. But no, the plan for this webcast is we're also going to try and turn it into a podcast on the Locker Room Rewind feed, but we'll go over the highlight stats and scores from the previous week of high school football. Like I said, week 1 in the books. We can kind of go ahead and go over some of those scores right now. Rotan beat Bront 60-12. Lakeview opening this season with a win for the 2nd straight year. They defeat Lamesa 35-8. Like you mentioned, Jaydon, Wall, number 5 Wall, taking down number 9 Eastland 38-3. We'll have more on that a little later. Brady and TLCA 81-8. Number 13 Ballinger defeating Jim Ned in a really close game 20-14. Stanton blanking Grape Creek, who's running a new single wing offense, 8-0 competitive in that one. Ozona beating Sonora with new head coach Jared Taylor at the helm for the Lions. They beat Sonora 15-8. Comanche blanking number 6 Mason in probably what was the most surprising outcome of week 1, 14-0. And then probably one of the games of the week, number 6 Wink beating number 13 Cristoval 36-21. We'll try and see if I can read that correctly.
It's a lot closer than what it is too. That score doesn't represent the actual and we can get into it, but how close Cristoval actually was to winning that game.
John Long's debut for number 19 El Dorado didn't really go as planned. They lose to San Saba 56-14. Coleman blanking Miles your old school coach, 32-0. Ingram Moore beating Junction 32-12. Cross Plains in Menard. The Buffaloes getting the best of the Yellow Jackets 60-6. Fourth-ranked Sterling City beating Garden City in the historic rivalry 74-28. And then Eden and Blackwell. We can talk about that one as well. What a game out in Eden.
That might have been the game of the week. Winning
62-60 in a close 6-man showdown. Erie County 45ing Panther Creek 54-0. Mullen beating Olfen in their first ever varsity football game for the Mustangs 64-0. And then Paint Rock also beating Lone 62-12. So like I said, the main point of this webcast / soon to be podcast, or if you're listening to it couple weeks later, the podcast. Thank you for coming back in time on Rewind with us. We're going to go over those stats and scores from the high school football season. And that's what brings us together here on Locker Room Rewind. Coach, I know, especially with you guys in the profession, Texas high school football, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, I would go ahead and say the biggest state for high school football. You guys are like disciples and followers of the sport. Just kind of talk me through, I guess, your love and passion for the game, because do you watch just because you enjoy it, or do you watch from, I guess, to kind of see how your future opponents are going to do, or is it kind of a combination of both?
It is, but I like to watch the guys I follow, or guys that coached me in high school, or guys I've coached with. I still keep up with Comanche. Like we were talking about earlier, you know, I've had some really good coaches that coached me in the past. I kept up with Monahans for a long time because of Coach Mickey Owens, and in Mason with Coach Burns. You know, some of those guys that I kind of look at as my mentors, I keep up with, and that's kind of who's on my feed every night whenever I want to check scores. Is that's where I go to see how those guys did, and obviously keep up with all the area schools, Ballinger, Miles. Kind of my hometown.
No, it's good. You have deep roots in this area as well. Graduating from Ballinger in I think you said 2007.
Yes,
so it kind of hits home for you. That's good. Jaydon, I know what you do. You nice stat watcher, lover of the game as well from your point of view.
I mean, I think that the biggest thing is not only from our area teams, but just looking at, you know, maybe just statewide. I think you can find an interesting or a competitive matchup in every classification every single week. And the ones that might fit the bill as what we think are going to be competitive might not live up to it. They might live up to it. And then you might have games maybe like Comanche and Mason where a team isn't expected to win. If you're looking at what a computer says, down by or favored by more than what?
I think it was 19.
19 Mason was. So, and then they go in and beat them. Mason lays a goose egg and they beat them 14-0. And stuff like that's really cool. I mean, now it is week 1 of the football season, but stuff like that's really cool. And then the aspect of just, you know, I guess me being from the Midland area, growing up, those rivalries of Midland High and Lee and Leo, Permian, and, you know, I guess for the San Angelo folks, like Central was in that mix as well. Just the camaraderie, like the amount of people that will show up at those games. It's transcends just like I want to go watch my kid play a sport. Like the entire community is involved, and when it gets to like that bigger scale, it's crazy because it's like a college football type environment in a way.
Even through a pandemic, like we saw yesterday, the attendance. I mean, it just felt like a normal Friday night football games. And I mean, from myself being from Houston, I never really understood just how much high school football means to, you know, these other cities here in Texas until I moved here back in January of 2019. And I went through that first football season last year, and I'm like, this is different. Like, it just feels different. You know, the air, it tastes different. And there's just this nice, you know, atmosphere around high school football here in West Texas for you guys listening or watching from outside of the area. It truly is a special event, special season. And it's a great thing about it is it brings people together like we are here today.
Well, one thing I will say is if you want to read just a good story about not 6A and 5A football, because I talked about me being from Midland and Odessa, or the Midland Odessa area. I'm from Midland, but you consider it one area. And generally that's your 6A. But a good story, and it's plugging Dave Campbell's, but Greg Tepper did a really good piece. I think it's back in like February of this year, where he talked about why, if you're a Texas football fan or high school football fan, why you need to get out and go to 3A, 2A, six-man games, because that environment of the small school feel of the, like, what it's portrayed, where the entire town shuts down, and like some of these it's insane. Like, I remember Wall and Mason last year to open the season. I mean, it was a big game because Fox Sports Southwest was out there and everything, but that was crazy. There were people lined up 3 hours before the game trying to get inside, tailgating going on. Like, it's just a whole nother animal, and something that I feel like the people that might be going to like Central games, or, you know, in Abilene's sake, like Abilene I, Cooper, Wiley, like, you know, it's just, you got to get down to maybe like a Christoval game, or specifically a Mason game, or, you know, some of these traditional schools that just have great attendances at football games.
Granted, also in 100-degree weather.
Yeah.
They're lining up outside of the stadium to get in. So nothing like it here in West Texas. That's Texas high school football. But going back to week 1 in the books, Lakeview, we're going to start with them. The Chiefs dominating Lamesa 35-8. They win back-to-back season openers for the first time since 1999, and on senior night, it was the seniors that prevailed. Senior quarterback Albert Rodriguez, 4 passing touchdowns, 3 in the first half, 1 rushing touchdown. Senior wide receiver Tristan Franklin, 3 receiving touchdowns, 3 catches for 122 yards. Senior wide receiver Austin Bandy, there's another one. He had a 66-yard touchdown reception in the second half as well. And then you have contributors like running back Josh Torres, who's a junior. He rushed for over 100 yards. So, guys, just what do you make of this game? I know Lamesa, there's a lot of change. They have a new head coach. They promoted Joseph Hood from defensive coordinator last year, and they dropped down a classification in February. And they didn't win a game in 2019. So a lot of change for Lamesa. But then you have Lakeview, who just kind of comes out and smacks them in the mouth. Yeah,
if I'm being honest, it's just like I felt like Lakeview should have done what they did in that football game. And, you know, 35-8 is considered a blowout, but I mean, you could have made the argument that Lakeview could have maybe put 50 plus on them. That might not be that Lakeview is going to be a great football team this season, but more of just like what you said, where it's Lamesa and they're trying to not necessarily adapt to a new head coach, because Coach Hood has been around that program, but they're also in the process of getting through growing pains. I mean, they didn't win a game last season, and, you know, Lakeview has a bunch of seniors back. It was just one of those that if Lakeview didn't kind of go out and perform the way that they did, then you'd be disappointed.
In Lakeview, they were favored by 25. They win by 27. I'll tell you, I'm right with you, Jaydon. I think Lakeview, we'll know more about it next week when they face Pecos.
Pecos is going to give them a good test for where that team is at, or it will show us where the Lakeview Chiefs are at, because that very well could be their best non-district game. I think they'd play Sweetwater as well, and Sweetwater played Stephenville competitive for a little bit last night, and I think Stephenville eventually kind of just pulled away. But there's a lot of people that say Sweetwater is going to be right up there with some of the other teams that, you know, are going to be competitive this year, especially if you look at the West Texas region of 4A football. So
another thing I'll add is, you know, Lakeview, with them dropping classifications a couple of years ago, they were bound to show a major improvement, and they've been able to do that. It's kind of proves what you can do when you're in the classification you're designed to be in, you know, and Lakeview's been at that level for a long time, and when they finally got to make that drop, it made a big difference, and they've gotten that confidence up and started rolling a little bit.
We'll see if the Chiefs can keep it rolling next Friday, September 4th, on the road at Pecos. Kickoff for that one set for 7 p.m. The Eagles are also favored by 18 points in that one, so we'll see if Lakeview can come out and flip the script there. Moving over to a team in your district, Coach, 5th-ranked Wall. They beat number 9 Eastland 38-3, but it probably going into the day wasn't the day or the game that we all expected.
No, not at all.
It was probably news that broke before the game that made the headlines. 11 players for the Mavericks didn't suit up, including quarterback and Texas Tech commit Baron Morton. 10 suspended for violating team rules. Obviously, we don't know the reason for that, but it's a game changer nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Morton, if you're going to prove a point in a non-district game. Now, I'm sure the Eastland Maverick faithful were not too thrilled that it was against Wall, and such a big build-up coming into the season was that game. If you're Wall, then I mean, of course you're going to take it. But I think at the same time they wanted it to be this, dogfight, as the cliches are out there. But because that really does kind of give you the test of where we're at week 1, and Wall will get more opportunities to do that. They've got Cisco coming up this week. Cisco's a really good football team, and that one's at home, but we'll be able to see where they're at. And then at Eastland's case, I feel like you can't really look at them and say, okay, well, yeah, Eastland's not going to be good this season. I mean, you sit out half your team, or half of your starters, then what do you expect?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, obviously throw that spread out the window, but Coach, violating team rules, 10 Eastland players suspended for violating team rules. What kind of factors into that terminology of violating team rules?
It can be a lot of different things. The first thing that came to my mind when I see something like that, and it's kind of a last minute situation, my first thought goes to UIL rules. Something that can't be put off to the next week. But it doesn't, just by looking at stuff online, it doesn't seem like it's that situation, and you don't want to speculate at what could be going on in that program, but you hate to see it, because I know that the Wall was looking forward to that. Their coaching staff always over there tries to always play the best teams possible, and they go out searching. They'll travel all over the state to find good competitive matchups in pre-district, and that was one that they wanted. And I feel bad for Eastland. Those team rules, no matter what it wasn't a good situation. And I feel bad for Wall too, to not get to go out and get that test that they were hoping for week 1.
And I know, especially today in today's social media era, there's a lot of, I guess, margin for error in between of probably saying something you shouldn't need to say on social media, or just posting something that just you should probably keep to yourself. Do you ever I guess talk to your team about that? What are kind of your thoughts and your messages to the team in terms of like social media policies?
The team I've got right now, I actually don't see them on social media very often, which is a good thing for the most part. I'm actually trying to get them to be more aware of it, how social media can be a positive thing for them. If you look how recruiting works these days, things like that, a Twitter page can make or break a kid's recruiting in any sport. I think 6A schools do a really good job of putting information out there on social media about how to do it the right way, and their kids buy into it because they see how it works. And I'm trying to get small schools to do the same thing, get my kids involved in it, and it can be a positive thing. It can also be a negative thing that you got to take care of, and hopefully that you don't have to discuss more than once.
And you guys can give TLCA Football a follow on Twitter as well. What's the @ for that? Do we know the @ handle for that?
It's just TLCA Football,
It's just
isn't it?
TLCA Football.
Yeah, go ahead and give TLCA Football a follow. big highlight from that Wall Eastland game, senior running back Chase Rios, 5 rushes. Get this, 5 rushes, 164 yards, 4 touchdowns on 5 carries. That average at 32.8 yards.
I'm rooting for Chase Rios. Rooting for him.
Big fan of Chase.
Big fan of Chase Rios. I'm happy that he did well last night. And I mean, I don't think there's many people that were going into this season, if you're familiar with Wall, that were necessarily not thinking that Chase Rios is capable of doing something like that. But to see him have that success, and he touched the ball 5 times, that's just awesome. And I love, you talked about opening, like, stuff like that, reasons to love Texas high school football. It's stats like that just they're crazy. I mean, and you could even go to Braden Wilcox has done that at Cristobal a few times with how many yards he's getting per carry, and it's just an awesome thing.
Yeah, we call that production.
Exactly.
32.8 yards per carry. Chase Rios, guess what, man? Claps for you. Round of applause. We're playing the claps. We'll see how that sounds. I don't know. We're all still trying to work this.
We don't have video right now because my laptop's down and doesn't have internet. So we'd normally be playing highlights right now. For those that are watching the webcast or the podcast, just imagine the highlights are playing. So,
or you can listen and go over to ConchoValleyHomepage.com and watch the highlights while you're listening.
Yeah,
because
I guess,
you can do that as a podcast.
Hey, Jeff's going to come on the set right now and just fix this.
Look at that.
Wait, he turned it on?
Woo.
Well, how about that?
Plug it in.
It was unplugged. As simple as that, folks. Technology failing me yet again.
We're getting to that age where we just don't understand technology anymore. Even as college graduates,
I'm 25 years old, and I feel like the gap between me and a 23-year-old, I feel like an old man, and it's starting to really concern me.
Oh, you're an old spirit at heart, Jaydon. I guess that
I'm an old soul.
I didn't even mean to play on words there.
Yeah, I got that.
How about that? So, Wall, they're taking on, like you said, hosting 4th-ranked Cisco next week. We'll have more on that next week, obviously, but one of the biggest games of the week for week 2 here in the Concho Valley. Coach, turning our attention to TLCA and Brady. You guys lose a hard one, 81-8, on the road at Brady. But, I mean, it's got to have some kind of special meaning to you, as it being your first game at head coach at a field that, I mean, we're talking off camera, at a field that you have a lot of history with. I guess just how are you feeling after that game? Going into the game, you mentioned jitters, no jitters?
Not as much as you would think, because I'm so used to Brady. I grew up in Ballinger, so I was playing them all the time. Then I came back and coached in this area and coached there a bunch. So before the game, I was kind of like, this helps. This is a good thing for us. Wish it had helped a little bit more, but it did make things a little bit better. Just being able to feel like I was comfortable in my situation and facing an opponent that I like to face. I mean, Ballinger Brady goes back a long time. My granddad was playing them in the 50s and everything else. So I got a lot of history there, and it was fun. It was fun.
And it's just one loss. I know it's easy to say, hey, it's just one loss, but there's a lot to learn from a loss. And there's this saying where school teaches you lessons to take a test, and life teaches you or gives you tests to learn lessons. And I think that's one of the things that you and your kids can take away from this is some lessons. Take those lessons and move on to week 2. Right.
And we learned a lot about who we were. We're extremely young. We didn't have a single senior on the field. We had a freshman that came out and had 11 tackles, 2 sacks, forced fumble, played amazing. Starting quarterback was a freshman, had almost 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. I mean, we've got pieces that are extremely bright for us. Do we wish we had some seniors out? Yeah, it would be nice to be able to go compete and have that size advantage that some schools have. But when you're out there playing 14, 15, 16-year-olds against 18-year-olds, it makes it difficult. But we had a lot of fun. I think y'all mentioned off camera that we were during that San Saba scrimmage, San Saba was really good, but we were out there having fun, and that's what I've been preaching since I got there, is confidence and having fun and enjoying football again. And we had our moments last night. In the first quarter, we made some big time plays. Our defense was looking really good. Had a few injuries happen in the second quarter and it got away from us. But we had some fun things that we got to see out of our kids, and hopefully can take some positives out of that. Take the negatives, learn from them, and then just move on and keep coaching, keep doing our thing.
And that's a big part about being an athlete as well, is just kind of taking see, I can't even speak English. I don't know how I have this job. Taking negatives and turning them into positives. So I guess with that being said, Coach, just kind of what were your messages to the team, before the bus ride home, on the bus ride home?
Mostly that we need to learn. We got to learn from our mistakes as a coaching staff. When injuries happen, it puts a stress on the coaches to get guys in the right situation where you can still be successful. From a kid's point of view, we found some stuff that we didn't know we had, like a freshman quarterback that was not nervous at all. I mean, I was so impressed with that kid stepping on the field. Didn't even play tackle football in junior high. He was a homeschooled kid, and he showed up and played on Friday nights for his first game ever. And it was impressive. And then you go into it and you look at some of the situations that came up that we really hurt ourselves on, and you get those things fixed and improve every day. But you're not gonna turn a program around in one game. So it's just about showing up for practice on Monday, getting healthy, and getting after it again.
Jaydon, yeah, you're good.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, I mean he's right. I mean, everything that Coach is saying is stuff that you want to hear out of a coach that is trying to turn a program around. It's like, I think we've said it just between the folks that work in the news station, sports, and everything. We look at this program right now, and yeah, you're in that transition. You're building a program, but as I've said, maybe it's going to be a lot different 1, 2, 3 years. Once these years progress, you get these kids into what it is that you're trying to sell them on as a head coach, and they buy into your program, then I mean, TLCA football is going to look a lot different.
It is, and TLCA has a lot to offer because we're not a traditional public school. We're not private. Being that charter school in town that is unlike anything in the area, really. I mean, anything in West Texas. There's not a whole lot of charter school type of situations out there, and we've got a lot of great kids at our school. A lot of programs that are successful. Our basketball program's doing really well. Got to give a little shout out to my AD there. Okay, he's
Coach Cheryl.
He's gotten things going in the basketball program. We've got 120 freshmen, and a lot of them that are in athletics and getting after it every single day. And as long as that keeps progressing, we're gonna be just fine. We'll be able to compete. It's just gonna take time, and it's gonna take keeping that image in our minds of where we want to go with things.
Watch out for TLCA Athletics. You guys are hosting Junction next Friday at 7:30 p.m. Coach Contrusi, he's a character.
I love Coach Contrusi.
He's always a good chat.
I love
you guys kicking off at 7:30. Coach, what do you just kind of have thoughts on Junction? What are your thoughts there?
Junction's going to be a fun one for me. I was there. My wife started her career there, and I did my student teaching there. And the kids that are now on that varsity were in my elementary PE class. so I've got a little history with Junction. You might say, seeing those kids when they were knee high to some of them are massive now. Junction's got a big old team, and they always are big. But Coach Contrusi's another guy that was at Ballinger, so I got a lot of ties there. And it's going to be fun. I'm glad it's in town. We don't have to travel to Junction. That's a fun atmosphere, hill country and all that stuff. But it'll be nice being at home for the next 2 weeks and really getting to get our kids more comfortable in our system, and I think I know we're going to play a lot better this next week.
I know Contrusi's kind of known for just joking around a lot.
Yeah.
You guys going to exchange some words during the week, or is it just?
I'm not going to say that because of COVID. I may get myself in trouble if we're talking too much.
Yeah.
But no, we're going to – me and Coach Contrusi get along pretty well, and it's going to be a fun week for me.
Just kind of – and this is something we talked about before the show, but it's just like the amount of connections and how many of these kids that are actually in high school right now playing varsity football that you've actually at one point or another been a part of their development in junior high or like you're talking about with Junction. Just
it's insane.
Rattle it off because it was really insane how many of these programs he's been a part of.
So I'm just looking at that Ballinger helmet sitting there, and I'm thinking that group of boys. I grew up going to church with their families and everything else, so there's that. But the Braden Bowman kid that got injured last week, he's a good friend of mine. I'm real close with his family. His dad coached me when I was a little kid in baseball, and there's so many ties in Ballinger that's pretty easy. But even like Central, Malachi Brown starting at quarterback for him, and I was coaching quarterbacks at Glenn when he was in 8th grade. Got to know him. Pretty much all those guys that are playing for Central now, I knew in junior high, and then you talk about Junction, and this is my second time at TLCA, so I've got a lot of background there. My wife's at Wall, so I know those kids, and I always try to make sure that I keep up with her kids and get to know them on a personal level, so that it seems like I'm involved in what she's doing with her career. And same thing in Bront. I have a lot of friends there now because of our coaching situations, and that's what makes our lives fun. We've never coached in the same city, which makes it hard, but at the same time we have so many connections and so many kids that we can walk around the mall here and they're like, "Hey, Coach Jones," and we're both looking around going, "Okay, is it your kid or mine?" And it's fun. It's a lot of fun to be in that situation.
The roots run deep for TLCA head coach Matt Jones. As you hear that air horn, it is about time to wrap up August 29th Locker Room Rewind. Let's go ahead and highlight a few key Week 2 games. Like we already mentioned, number 4 Cisco traveling to number 5 Wall. Kickoff time for that one at 7:30 p.m. You head over to Lakeview Stadium, too, around the same time. Junction taking on TLCA. And then we have Lakeview on the road at Pecos. 7 p.m. kickoff time there. 4th-ranked Sterling City taking on May. That should be a good one as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a really –
we're going to learn a lot.
2 big 6-man games next week. Again, I would have considered Sterling City and Garden City a big 6-man game solely based on the rivalry factor this week. Sterling City beat them pretty handily. Mercy rule at halftime, rarely that's something that's going to happen in that game. But this week should be a lot different. May is a very good football team, and like you said, this is where we'll find out really what the Eagles are about. And then you look at the other one, Eden and Lakey. Eden, a huge win. Like I said earlier, game of the week probably was Eden and Blackwell, because you have Blackwell fighting back, and then in the fourth quarter, it's just back and forth scoring. And you don't really – it comes down to who's going to have the ball last. And Eden beats them by 2 points. And now they've got that chip on their shoulder against a good Lakey team, and – they'll have several opportunities to play tough games in their non-district, but just another one right off the bat.
Yeah, that Eden and Blackwell game just emotionally was so just intense, and it's always interesting to watch to see how a team responds after an emotional win, because normally they come out sluggish the next game. So we'll see how Eden responds against number 6 Lakey, and then you got Ozona traveling to number 6 Wink, who we saw Cristoval lose in a very tough game that, the scoreboard didn't define that actual game. So we'll see with that one as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Locker Room Rewind. As always, you can check out all of our content on ConchoValleyHomepage.com. And if you're listening on the podcast feed and you want to go back and rewind and relive the entire 2020 Texas high school football season, you can just go ahead and wait for the next episode to play. Best of luck to you, Coach, against Junction. Like I said, kickoff time, 7:30 p.m. at Lakeview Stadium. TLCA taking on Wall September 4th. We'll be back next week. This was Locker Room Rewind, brought to you by Chunky Gnomes Insurance.